Donald Trump continues to be hell-bent on reopening schools, even as the number of new coronavirus cases continues to surge throughout the country. The number of deaths continues to surge across the country. And for all the teachers out there who have been protesting his demands to reopen schools, he does have a message for you. Let's take a look.
What is the latest on your view of how these schools should reopen?
My view is the schools should open. This thing's going away. It will go away like things go away. And my view is that schools should be open. If you look at children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease. So few, they've got stronger, hard to believe, I don't know how you feel about it, but they have much stronger immune systems than we do somehow for this.
So one thing that I think people need to obviously focus on, as opposed to the stupid stuff coming from that babbling idiot, is the fact that this virus does seem to mutate, right? And unfortunately, we're seeing some studies now that show that it's having long-term ramifications on children's health. I'm gonna get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to debunk the idea that opening schools right now would be okay, it would be safe, that no one would get hurt as a result, because some states have already begun reopening schools. And we now have some evidence to show that it's a terrible idea. So let's go to the state of Georgia. It's been less than a week since schools in Georgia began to reopen, and unfortunately, coronavirus is raging beyond their doors. And so, to give you some specific examples, Sixes Elementary in Cherokee County School District began in-person classes on Monday. But by Tuesday, a classroom was temporarily closed for deep cleaning, and the teacher and 20 other students had been asked to quarantine for 2 weeks after the second grader tested positive. There's another example. So when schools reopen, obviously we know it's not just about children who are exposed to this virus, it's also about other people working at that school. So since Marietta City Schools began replanning on July 27th, 5 employees have tested positive and another is presumed positive. Jen Brock, the system's executive director of communications, told CNN. Now, in Georgia's largest school district, 260 district employees had been barred from actually entering the schools due to coronavirus concerns. So for instance, Gwinnett County serves more than 180,000 students, okay? And so what's going on there? As of last Thursday, we had approximately 260 employees who had been excluded from work due to a positive case or contact with a case. The number is fluid as we continue to have new reports and others who are returning to work. So look, this is rapid. This is like a rapid update on what happens when school districts open. It just further reinforces what we already suspected, and it puts people's lives in danger. And even the head of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, in a video that we shared with you guys recently, said that if the economy is the only thing you care about, you don't even care about people's lives, right? You only care about the economy. It would not only save people's lives, but it would even save the economy if we did a proper shutdown. If we had a proper shutdown where we can slow the spread of this virus, do contact tracing, and then reopen as a country responsibly. But we're obviously unwilling to do that. And for those of you who might think, well, what's the big deal? These are children. Children seem to be immune to this. They're not immune to this. I'll get to that in just a minute, but John, I wanted you to jump in.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna have something to say about some of the numbers that I've seen for kids spreading it. But this really does feel, and it's gonna feel more like this day by day, that they have just decided that this is the new battleground. That a couple of months ago it was businesses have to reopen, gyms in particular for some reason have to reopen. And really it's about the image. It's about reassuring their base that everything is okay. You can go back to ignoring this whole thing. And school is the new one. And they feel like it's sort of a freebie, that it's easy to do that because they've convinced themselves that kids aren't going to get sick. And as you're gonna break down, that's not at all the case. And the entire time, like, we lost 1,400 people in just one day. Does anyone feel like they can confidently say that in 3 months on election day, we won't lose 1,000 people, 2,000 people, God only knows what the numbers will be like then. And to have these decisions being made by people who have been underestimating the virus since before it even hit the United States, have been actively undercutting and working against the recovery since day one, for them to be making these decisions, and now in particular decisions focused around the health of children, is just about the sickest thing that I can imagine right now as an election ploy.
So some of these studies have looked into what happens to children physically when they contract this virus. Now, there's the issue of children having the virus and essentially serving as super spreaders because they tend to be asymptomatic. However, in a recent study sparked by the case of a 15-year-old named Nia Houghton, doctors actually found links between the virus and long-term neurological problems in children. So this is something we need to be aware of. Again, there's a lot that's still unknown about coronavirus. And so for people talking about how harmless it is to children, just be skeptical of that, because usually, especially in the case of Donald Trump and other members of the GOP, they have a vested interest in getting people back to work, not only a financial interest, but also, as John perfectly laid out, a political interest, a political agenda behind their motives. So according to the lead author of this study, after several days in recovery, Nia Houghton and her condition worsened once again. This time it was her brain rather than her lungs that was affected. Awake night after night, she began hallucinating, seeing and hearing people in the hospital who were not really there. During this period, Nia's voice and behavior appeared to regress to a younger version of herself. Pediatric neurologist Dr. Ming Lim of the Evelina London Children's Hospital diagnosed her with encephalitis, an inflammation of the brain. And what's also scary is that since she had all the symptoms and was diagnosed with COVID-19, doctors didn't expect or see the damage to her brain coming or anything happening to her brain coming. So Dr. Lim considered Nia's neurological symptoms as a late onset secondary inflammatory illness associated with COVID-19. We worried that the long-term effect would be in essentially brain growth, he said, a particular concern among children and young adults whose brains are still developing. So these are things we need to be concerned about. And anyone who's trying to downplay the consequences of this virus should not be trusted. Again, especially if it's someone like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and look, obviously for the kids themselves, their numbers are better, but they can still die. They can get this associated inflammatory disease that we've seen in other countries. We've been talking about it for literally months now. We don't know the long-term ramifications, but they seem bad. But also, studies have shown, the most recent one that we profile on TDR is that kids below 10 transmit COVID at about half the rate that adults do, which is better, but that is not what it has been portrayed to be, that it's effectively none, that they don't transmit it at all. That's half, that's below 10. Between like 11 and 17, it said they're more likely than adults. And that's a big chunk of all of the kids in school. That's all of the kids in high school. And many of these, by the way, haven't been really contributing at all to the spread of the virus so far. They've been at home, they haven't had to be at work. They've mostly been just around their families. They haven't been interacting as some adults have. But now we're gonna be throwing out tens of millions of those people, and many of them are even more likely to spread it than the adults were. This is an absolute disaster.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.